Good afternoon, council and guests. May I have call the meeting to order, mover and seconder, please? Councillor Ma, Councillor Ritchie, that the special meeting of Council of Township of Springwater of August 5th, 2020 come to order at 5 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Due to COVID-19, Council is taking the necessary steps to limit in-person meetings. As such, some Council will be participating in the meeting electronically, and staff who are here in the meeting physically, along with myself, are appropriately physically distanced. You can watch the meeting live on the Township website, www.springwater.ca. You can listen to it from a telephone at 1-647-558-0588 and use the ID 857-1380-5525 and then #. You can do this during the duration of the meeting, and for those who are unable to watch the live stream, you're encouraged to review the meeting at your convenience by watching the video on the Township's YouTube station. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? All right, there don't appear to be any. So I now call upon Melanie Stewart of Jason Descharmes, Graham Wedge of MNP to join us electronically via Zoom with a presentation on the service delivery review. Welcome.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. So we have about an hour, and I understand that people will have received this report I believe last week or Friday, or at least had a chance to take a look at it. There is a fair bit of material in it, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to get through the presentation in about half an hour, and then hopefully have some questions and get some of your feedback. Just a quick introduction of our team. I'm Jason Descharmes. I'm the overall lead from MNP. Very pleased to be part of this exciting project. And with me, I've got two key core members, many of you whom you have interviewed, Melanie Stewart and Graham Wedge. So without further ado, I'm going to make my way through the presentation. As I said, just in terms of the agenda, once we finish the introduction, I'm going to talk a little bit about current state assessment. I'm just looking at page 2 right now. Then emerging opportunities, what we're sort of initial thinking, and then leave about 25 minutes for us to chat.
Jason, if I may interrupt, if there are people tuning into this, the presentation is attached to the agenda on the website if you want to refer to that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Good clarification. Just looking at page 4 of the presentation, the overall objective of these service delivery reviews is really to just take a close look at how the municipality operates, take a look at areas that might be run more efficiently, but also effectively, making sure that the town is really run well. And so our company, we've done a number of these, and we're pleased to sort of be about halfway through our work with Springwater. The project, just taking a look at the status update, is divided into 2 parts. We do something called a current state review, where we do interviews. We take a look at the services that you deliver. We take a look at some comparisons to other municipalities. We consult with stakeholders, and we come up with an initial set of opportunities of what we think might be some of the things that could help the municipality improve its service and be more effective. And that's really where we are in terms of a current state report. Following this, our next step is to actually get more into detail. And so that's why, moving on to page 5, it's a perfect time to connect with council on a project like this. We have done our homework. We have identified a lot of different areas of investigation, and we've got this initial list of potential opportunities. And Despite this being a work in progress, it is a very good time to connect with council. So what we're hoping to do is highlight the key findings of our current state report, review this list of preliminary opportunities, and then hear your thoughts and confirm project direction. What we don't want to do is get all the way to the end of the project and realize, oh, there was something else we should have looked at, or we also don't want to spend a lot of time taking a look at things that really are not going to go anywhere. So again, very good time to connect with council, and I'm looking forward to your thoughts. What I'd like to do is try to make my way through the presentation and then have all the questions at the end. If there's a burning question on one of the pages, please feel free to let me know. And then I'm looking at my screen, so you'll have to verbally make a comment halfway through. But most likely what I'd like to try and do is get through the presentation and then turn it over to discussion. So then just jumping forward to page number 8, which is what we heard. And we heard some very common themes. Just about everybody that we spoke to said, we're really in for some serious growth and expansion. With Midhurst, significant growth and expansion is expected, with potential, another 10,000 dwelling units over the next 20 to 30 years. So that is not an insignificant increase. So many of the challenges and issues and opportunities related to the significant growth that's projected for Springwater. There was some other areas in terms of pretty effective service delivery in many areas already. So the township's taken advantage of several outsourcing and shared service opportunities to remain efficient and effective as possible within a lean organization. We didn't find large areas of excess of waste, quite frankly. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but when you compare your costs to other municipalities, you're pretty competitive. So that's certainly a strength of the municipality. Some of the recent investments in technology budgets are certainly helping you to take advantage of some new ways of doing work. There's a team-oriented and hardworking staff. Staff are viewed as a team and work well together within and across the department. We don't see that a lot. Like, we often hear, oh, one department never talks to the department. We didn't hear that here. There's a lot of collaboration, which is great. And then there are also some initiatives to improve communication, health and safety, and corporate training. And obviously what the township's been doing in the last 6 months with the whole pandemic, we'll see in another slide, is viewed very positively. Some of the things that we heard that were maybe a little bit more of a challenge is there's definitely a concern that in the state you are right now, it's going to be very tough to manage the growth and expansion that's projected. You'd think that anytime you have almost a doubling of population, you're going to need more people, you're going to need more processes, you're going to need more expertise and systems to support growing from, a community of where you are right now to a sizable sized municipality. We did hear a lot of a couple of folks mentioned that there's at times a bit of geographic tension between sort of the new growth areas in the south and the more rural. I like the word bucolic. It's gorgeous. I know Springwater very well, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely got some gorgeous rural areas in it. That can create a bit of a tension between things in terms of service standards and expectations. In certain particular areas of expertise and staffing levels, there was concern that when you're doing accommodating a lot of growth, a lot of construction, a lot of new building permits, that you need some technical expertise to be able to manage that. Unapproved staff and capital investments due to weak business cases. This was something that again we see a lot in municipalities, which is Staff will come to council and they'll say, we really think we need to do this. And council sometimes pushes back saying, well, what's the business case? Why do we have to spend this money? What's the return on investment? And so one of the challenges, I think, is that some of the things that maybe should have been done or could have been done may not have been because the business case is not really strong. Disconnect among councillors. We did hear this from a number of sources that you're not all of the same mind at times. Now that can be great because it's good to have diverse views, but the downside is sometimes that can erode efficiency of decision making and things like that. So that was something that was mentioned in some of our interviews. Moving on to page 10. Technology, even though you have made some investments, I think there's a recognition that more needs to be done on that front, particularly things like budgeting, things like tracking online services and things like that. Level standards and key performance indicators, there weren't a lot of those. There's some that are mandated, but it wasn't really clear that these are working their way right into management decisions. And a growth plan. I think that there is, or we observe that there is planning for the physical part of growth, which would be the infrastructure, the roads, the water, the services. It's like a growth plan is there, but there's another part which is building capacity, like a plan to grow the municipality, like the number of people you have, the service you offer, plans to build your capacity as a municipality are not as far advanced as the plans to actually accommodate the physical growth, the new houses. So in terms of top priorities, page 11, I think we heard that growth, fiscal responsibility, and asset management. You'll see we heard that from councillors as well as staff. In fact, actually, pretty much the whole top 5 priorities, growth, fiscal management, asset management, municipal services, and organizational structural improvements. Those were very similar held views of priorities by council and staff, which is a very important strength. It's good to see that you're aligned as political leaders as well as the staff to say, here's what we need to do to strengthen our municipality. Moving on to what we heard, we conducted a survey of staff. We had quite a good response rate, and a lot of the things that we heard from staff is that staff certainly believe that they're efficient and effective. Overwhelmingly, a lot said that we're doing a pretty good job. The township's top priorities for residents, staff ranked 3 priorities: delivering services effectively, efficiently, affordable taxes, and upgrades to infrastructure were the things that staff felt that were very important for the residents and businesses in the township. Future growth, again, that same theme in terms of what are we doing to accommodate this growth, not just for the physical part, so as a municipality. The township's response to the COVID the 19 pandemic was very positive. A lot of folks who think that the township's done a really good job. And so, and also internal communication. Staff feel that they're pleased with internal communications. Now, just shifting gear a little bit into financial perspectives on page 15. These charts give a sense about what are the kinds of things you're spending money on. This first one compares budgets versus actuals. So what you see here is the size of the bar shows the relative amount you're spending. So for instance, down at the bottom there, salaries are 35% of what you spend. But the interesting thing there is that the 2 colored bars are pretty close, which means you're pretty good at predicting or budgeting for what the actual expenditures will be. Revenues on the right-hand side of the page, a little bit more of a difference. Most obviously, as most of your revenues come from taxation. User fees are second. There's a little bit more of a gap between what is the actuals are versus what was budgeted. And I think what we've learned is that that's because you're particularly um, a bit more conservative about projecting revenues. You don't want to be stuck at the end of the year with a shortfall because you thought you were going to get some revenues from user fees, but they didn't materialize. So um, some of the revenue underestimation is probably due to those conservative financial policies. When we look just on the next page, page 16, at the budget breakdown, the main things that you're spending money on is public works and parks and recreation and policing and general admin. So those are your big ticket items in terms of your budget. Fire building, I think you benefit from volunteers on the fire force. When we looked at numbers, your cost obviously was quite good compared to other municipalities. And one thing I would say about this slide is that when we get to the next stages of our work, we like to look at areas that are big portions of budgets, because those are the ones where, even if you save 3 or 4%, it can be a pretty big number. If you try to save 3 or 4% of your council or your conservation expenditures, it doesn't really make too much of a difference on the tax levy. Whereas if you can save some money on public works, parks and rec, or policing, it does make a pretty big difference. In terms of capital, I think what was interesting about capital on page 17 is that you're in pretty good shape in terms of your capital. I don't want to look at every one of these numbers in detail, but at a high level, your reserve balances are pretty high and your debt room is pretty good, which means you're in good financial shape when compared to other municipalities. Some people would say, maybe you should be spending a bit more, investing a bit more in capital. And we actually do identify that as one of the opportunities, is that sometimes spending a little bit on capital, using a bit of those reserves, can be a great rate of return. So just moving on to our opportunities, and I'm on page 19 right now. When we sort of sat back and talked as a team about what what we observed in this first couple of months on this project, is that overall, spring water, from our perspective, is pretty well managed. You've benefited from a dedicated staff, shared services, and kept costs and taxes relatively low when we looked at other municipalities. Um, what that probably means is that this service delivery review, we're not going to find a pot of gold of a bunch of expenditure savings. We don't think that there's obviously room for improvements, but it's not going to be finding 10% reduction in public work. We didn't find a whole lot of obvious inefficiency, so we wanted to set that expectation that this service delivery review is probably not going to find you $10 million or $5 million in savings. In fact, it won't. On the other, another theme, though, is that your costs are very likely going to increase dramatically, because not only do you have the growth, but you're going to have things like more staff, more fire trucks, more. You most likely are going to probably move from a volunteer to a professional fire service. These are the kinds of things that happen when a municipality doubles in size within 10, 15 years. So we do believe that costs will increase not just by inflation, but by simply the fact that as a much larger municipality, you're going to have a bigger services. Other theme is that growth, although it's a strength and an opportunity, there's many municipalities in Ontario who would die to have the growth that you're projecting in your municipality. It's certainly a strength to have that market potential, but there are risks associated with that. We don't, you wouldn't want to see growth undermining some of the character, the unique character of the municipality. You want to make sure that are not caught off guard by some of the expectations of new residents and of services. So that's why I think one of the biggest themes we came out of is that what you need to do over the next 3 to 5 years is strengthen your organizational capacity. Um, and as I mentioned, you've done some planning, preparing for the actual uh, uh, infrastructure like MIDHRS, secondary plans, and things like that. But a lot of work needs to be done thinking about, well, how many more public works employees are we going to need? What kind of new parks and recreation programs, supports, and services are we going to require? What kind of technology are we going to have to invest in? Things like e-permitting. A lot of municipalities are going to online building permit reviews and circulating the plans all virtually because it can be a lot more efficient. When those kinds of things are the kinds of opportunities that we're seeing from this service delivery review. Moving on to the last couple pages, just page 20. Uh, we think that there's probably an initial list, and these are not prioritized at all. This was some of our initial ideas about where your money would be well spent, or what is the kinds of things you're going to need to strengthen that municipality, particularly in terms of getting ready for the growth that's projected. We've grouped them into things which are probably a little bit easier. The ones that these first pages things, they're not too complex and not too expensive. So we think that there is probably some community building initiatives in terms of engagement and cohesion, strengthening the view of what's spring water, what makes spring water unique, and thinking about how that combination of well-planned new growth plus the rural character is actually unique and amazing. So there's probably some community cohesion initiatives that you could work on. Certainly stronger data-backed business cases for investments, strengthening the way in which you analyze and review things in which, like the asks from council. Strengthening the council's relationship in terms of just its effectiveness as a governing body. Strengthening the township's technology capabilities. There are lots of cool tools out there that municipalities are investing in. Defining and implementing service levels and standards and KPIs. That's all about knowing what the minimum standard is, and then if you make a decision to either plow the snow more than is the bare minimum required, or if you make a decision to offer services that aren't required, you have a good sense of how much those costs are. Taking advantage of the healthy reserves and debt room to make strategic investments. This is something I mentioned previously, that you are in a good position that with strategic investments, you can really get a good return. And you are lucky because a lot of municipalities that we deal with are not nearly in the same kind of financial condition that you are. They're in big trouble, quite frankly. They got a lot of cost, no assessment, in fact, assessment decline, and declining provincial grants, which is putting them into a very difficult situation. Number G, a little bit more formalized financial policies, just in terms of documenting things like your policies about recognitions of revenues. These are the kinds of things that are required of a sort of a growing, more mature, more documented and following the process in terms of a larger municipality. Moving on to page number 27. These are ones which opportunities which are probably a little bit more complex and a bit higher cost in terms of increasing the organizational capacity to manage growth and expansion. So this is thinking very planfully about what would a town what would a town that's twice the size of us look like? What were the requirements, service delivery requirements are of that size of a town, and then what do we as a municipality need in terms of capacities, expertise, technology, equipment, all those kinds of things. Thinking about what it's going to take to be able to accommodate that growth. There's no doubt you're going to have to increase staff levels. You can't service a municipality that's twice the size with what you've got right now. So thinking about what your both succession plan and recruitment plans are is going to be an important part of the future. Accelerate asset management and opportunity planning. So thinking about where those critical investments are in terms of assets. And restructuring the organization to ensure an optimal span of control and realign departments. Right now, your CAO has a lot of direct reports, and that's probably sustainable in your current size. Although we would start to say that pretty soon you're going to have to think about some kind of a reorganization to reduce the number of direct reports to the CAO and think about alternative organizational structures that are more efficient for making decisions and delegating of authorities. So that's a whirlwind tour. And what is it? 5:27. I did 3 minutes ahead of time. So with that, I would like to turn it over to the floor. We're very, very interested in your initial reactions to what we've presented. Any areas that you strongly agree, or if you disagree, we want to hear that too. Are there any missing opportunities? Or inaccuracies? And then I'd also be interested in hearing out of that list of opportunities, what are the top 10 or what are the top 5 that you feel really should be done in the next in the next 3 to 5 years?
Thank you.
I'll leave discussion of next steps until we finish discussion. Maybe just to close the meeting, I'll talk about next steps. So with that, I'd like to try and turn it over and to the floor.
Okay, thank you, Jason. But just, you'll go over next steps, but to put it in context, maybe you could just give us an overview of where the process goes from here to finalization. Because that might factor into the discussions once we open the floor.
Good question. So obviously this list of opportunities is very high level. It doesn't have the details that you would need to be able to make a decision to yes or no on any of these. So what they are is their initial list of areas that we think are worth investigating. Our next stage is where we do the deep dives into these opportunities to take a look at the benefits, the costs, the complexity, the risks, who needs to be involved, the timelines, all the kinds of things with the meat onto these opportunities. So our next steps are going to be to take these list of opportunities as including recommendations or suggestions from council and start to do more detailed investigations. And our plan is to come back to this group in about a month and say, okay, we heard you in terms of your initial review of the opportunities. We've done our homework, and here's more specifics about the list of what we're recommending for the township. So I believe that is scheduled for August 31st, or it might be September 2nd. I can't remember. Melanie, or September 2nd. Oh, so yeah, okay. So September 2nd, I think, is when we're going to reconvene. And at that time, what we'll have is more of the actual details associated with these. So instead of opportunities, there'll be recommendations.
So
does that help?
So it's September 2nd, then council, based on more details of areas of focus that hopefully we might indicate after this meeting, you'd come back on September 2nd with more detail of what would be involved with diving into those further, cost and time-wise thereafter?
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
And at that time, we would have our recommendations report, and we might have 15 recommendations. And what we would ask council for at that time is acceptance of our report, and then most likely what happens is that staff go and look at them and then come back with a supplemental report back to council after we're done. But our job is to give you as enough analysis and detail to be able to comfortably nod your head on September 2nd saying, okay, this sounds like a pretty good roadmap of initiatives to strengthen our township.
okay, thank you. Okay, I open the floor to council for comments, questions. Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I guess I have a number of questions, but I'd first like to have clarification, understand how you've made all these determinations. Because of COVID-19, am I correct in assuming that it was just all verbal interviews, that you never attended the township and did any on-site reviews of staff workloads and so on? So I'll let you answer that first, please.
Jason?
That is correct. For health reasons, and both our company as well as your municipality, everything's been done virtually. I would say that has been done everywhere across Ontario. So all our municipal work is now all virtual. I'm lucky enough to know Springwater pretty well, and I've been up there quite a bit. And two of our team members live in Barrie, so we have a pretty good familiarity about the municipality. But unfortunately, we have not been able to walk the streets.
Okay, thank you. And going forward, when we come back, I'm probably going to be asking you if you did a management review that included looking at what staff do, why do they do it, if it needs to be done, is there a better way of doing it? Is it a more efficient, effective way of doing the things that are being done, and why we do them? I guess is what I'm looking for. And I would also, if you're going to make suggestions that we need to hire more staff and so on, and also buy more technology. We've been buying technology over the years. If technology is not reducing the workload and we still need staff, I would like to see that it's supported by more than just staff interviews, probably timesheets, workload for the month signed off by their supervisor saying this is what they did. They got up in the morning, they came to work at 8 o'clock, went home at 5 o'clock. During that day of the week, Monday to Friday, this is what they did. And again, is there a more efficient way of doing that, or is there duplication being done as a way of streamlining the workload? Those are the things I'll be looking for. Sorry, just to give you a heads up going forward, not just verbal interviews, but actually some form of documentation to support your findings and support the recommendations. If we're going to be asked to hire more people, that's probably one of our major costs to taxpayers. So we have to make sure we're doing it right. I don't disagree that we have great staff and they work hard, but if we're going to be buying more and hiring more, we need to be able to support it. Thank you.
Completely understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cabral?
There we go. Thank you, Mayor Allen. A couple of questions. One of them was dealing with facilities. Now I know the answer to that. You did it all remotely. With respect to the interviews, I understand that a couple of things here. One was I was of the impression there was going to be a survey as well as interviews with staff. I just want to get a sense of the surveys. Did every staff member complete one if there was one? And of the staff members, I'm just trying to get a feel for the staff that actually participated in one-on-one interviews, let's say. What kind of cross-section of staff did we see? Like, did we see outside staff, Parks and Rec staff, part-time staff, or was it mostly, specific departments and specific administrative people?
Okay. I'm actually going to turn that one over to either Melanie or Graham. Melanie, I think you were pretty involved in both the staff survey as well as the one-on face-to-face, I guess, face-to-face interviews over the computer. Do you want to summarize our coverage?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So starting with the staff survey, we did send out an online survey. It was sent to 83 different email addresses at the township, and we received a response rate of 87%. And I can give you a quick overview of the response rate by department. So of the 72 responses, we had 10% from administration, 4% from building services, 7% from clerks and bylaw, 10% from finance, 7% from fire, 8% from planning, 25% from public works, 13% from recs, parks, and facilities, and 17% from the public library. So that was sort of the spread of responses from each of the departments for the online staff survey. And in regards to our interviews, so we did meet with representatives from each of the departments. Primarily, our interviews were with directors. So the director of each department. Where there was a department perhaps without a director, such as parks, recs, and facilities, we met with managers. We also met with from the administration, some of the managers in that department as well.
Follow up,
Thanks
please.
very much, Melanie.
Follow-up?
Just clarification on that, and then one additional quick question. So my understanding would be that as far as interviews themselves, no real rank and file had interviews. I just want to be sure on that. And the second one, was the survey provided to council members? Because if it was, I don't recall getting it. I would have liked to have seen it to see what the types of questions were and how they were drafted and formulated. And the last one is with respect to the shared services, I'm just trying to get a sense here of whether those shared services are internally shared services between departments that create efficiencies, or are these shared services with outside organizations which we may be paying for? I just wanted that. So if you could clarify both of those, I'd really appreciate it.
We'll get you a copy of the survey. So we'll follow up this meeting and send a copy of the survey out just so you can take a look at the questions. In terms of the shared services, I'm going to start, and then maybe Graham might be able to talk a little bit more detail, but it's both. So there are some shared services internally, some of your finance function, IT services, facilities, and things like that. But there are also shared services with other municipalities, other organizations that are beneficial as well. Graham, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, that's essentially it. Once we get into the details and we look at, again, it has to be bespoke for Springwater. It has to work for the community. So in some cases, not to just say that shared services is the blanket solution. So we have to look at the details and see there may be overlapped internally. There may be other municipalities that are looking for that. We've worked with some municipalities that the surrounding municipalities all talk that shared services, it's an aspiration that they have, but there's just been not that common communication channels for them to talk about it, to say, yes, let's do it, and let's work out the details. And it could be everything from winter road maintenance and things like that. So we'll look at that and then offer recommendations accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. And through you, when you spoke about the municipal comparators used, which municipalities were used as comparators?
Oh, you guys you have great questions. I don't have them off the tip of my tongue. Graham, do you have them by any chance?
I don't have it here. We can provide that though. We can provide.
I know it was included Innisfil, Midland.
Oh, Melanie's got her hand up. She's got it in front of her.
Melanie.
It's we use the Township of King, Township of Wilmot, the City of Barrie, and the Town of Innisfil.
I think for some of the comparisons, we may have looked up at Midland as well.
Yeah.
But the financial benchmarking was those pretty close comparators.
Yeah.
Councillor
It'll
Moore?
be in the final report as well.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you. Just a curiosity, if I know we're high level today, but looking at specifics down the road, will you be recommending capital projects? Will you be recommending that we do or not proceed with the community hub, for instance, that we're considering, or large land purchases, looking at the growth potential in the next 3 to 5 years?
I'm going to say absolutely, and that would be the kind of details that would be behind our opportunity, which is you're pretty strong financially in terms of both your reserves and your debt capacity carrying ratio. So things like community hubs, I mean, we're not detailed planners, right? So we may not be able to, but we certainly would look at the slate of opportunities, and we may also find others which we see from other larger municipalities that might be a good idea. Things like shared facilities, those kinds of investments in assets, we would certainly include on our more detailed analysis. But I like it. That's a good suggestion. We'll make sure we look at that.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you. And further to Councillor Moore's comments, when the recommendations come forward regarding our reorganization or recommendations as to our organizational capacity, is it going to be high level, simply that we need to reorganize, or is it going to be specific by department, saying we are short this many people in this department, we are short this many people in this department? What's the objective there? What can we expect?
Our initial thinking on this is probably somewhere between those two extremes. So what we intend to do is we intend to look at municipalities that are the size that you're growing to. Look at a number of them and say, hey, listen, they all have roughly about 150 staff, or they have 180 staff, whatever that number is. So that will give some sense about the scale, order of magnitude of your growth trajectory over the next 10, 20 years, that you'll probably need to become a municipality that has this number of staff. And at the same time, we will also look at organizational structures, whether it's a city manager model, or whether it is typically what happens is that functions like finance, IT, HR, and facilities get collapsed under a single report, which is a sort of a corporate services director. So that's a very common maturation of an organizational model, which would be more streamlined. So yes, we will be identifying order of magnitude staffs. We will be identifying sort of positions and departments, but we're not doing a detailed org chart. Like we're not going to say you need to have 15 and a half FTEs in this particular area.
Follow on?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Thank you. Push it again. So similarly with council and the findings of the cohesiveness of council, would it be simply workshops or in-house events? I know that it's not something that I think that spending money on would be supported by, but is it, like, what type of recommendations can we expect from you?
What there is there's a lot of good thinking about the role of value-adding roles of council. Perfect. And what we would do is we would be leveraging some of that in terms of your role as a governing entity, committee structures, and then really thinking about how do you function as an effective governing body for a municipality. There's a lot of really good research about that. So I don't think we're going to be doing one-on-one coaching with anybody, but what we're doing is giving a really good framework about what a highly effective council looks like, and then some recommendations about how you might get there.
Councillor Ma?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through to you. Just also on top of that answer, would you be looking at, with our growth, changing the structure of council, changing the ward factors, things like that?
That's a really good question, and we've actually not. I don't think amongst our team, but we've thought about that. But we'll take that as an action item to make sure that we address that question in our more detailed investigation. It's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
Councillor Cabral?
I think you're on mute.
Takes them a while.
Thank you, it does. Sometimes it does. One of the items here, going back to page 11, we were fairly congruent as far as the top 5 or 6 things staff council were on. One of the things that I think is in my opinion, very important is actually would be H, which is customer service enhancements. And I think that goes hand in hand with J, which is improved processes and procedures. I think we're duty bound to the residents to provide them the best customer experience we can. And also thinking along the lines of almost a service delivery or a service commitment model, what their expectations can be and what their expectations can be achieved when they reach out to a particular department for a particular service, that they have certain expectations of maybe being contacted back or when these things might be completed. I just was wondering if you would be looking at what we're presently doing now, because I really don't think that we have something like that in place where our residents can feel that there is some kind of, let's say, a model or a service delivery promise, let's say, that Springwater Township has in place. There may be other municipalities that already do. I'm just curious to know whether that's something that's in the works. I see that as being relatively important to our residents.
We may not have communicated this very well, but one of our opportunities is an area about service level standards and KPIs. And that's all about accountability to the ratepayers, the businesses and the people that live there. And what it is it's a more structured approach to service delivery that says, we have some options here. We have an option, which is we just do the bare minimum that a municipality is legislated to do, and we'll have low taxes. But we have options to have enhancements in certain areas. It might be enhancements in road maintenance. It might be more like all those kinds of things. So what we'll be arguing there is a clearer articulation of the decisions that are made to align service levels and service delivery with the expectations and the needs of the residents.
Councillor Hanna, and then back to you, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you. Sorry, George, didn't mean to cut you off there.
I'll follow up in a minute.
Jason, you mentioned about shared services, and as Councilor Cabral pointed out, to residents' desire for better services. If it helps any, over the years, we've heard that we should be looking at outsourcing some of our things, whether it's cutting the lawns and parks. We have done some outsourcing and gone to street sweeping and so on. It would be nice to know whether that was a positive thing, and if so, whether we should be doing more, whether it's a less expensive way for us to proceed in the future with all the growth. Because I had another thought, I can't remember what it was. But yeah, the other thing we've often heard of, especially from people in the South, they would like to see us get rid of the OPP in the South and have buried police us only because they're not satisfied with the service that they receive from the OPP being at their Wasaga Beach. And sometimes it takes them a while to get down to the southern part of our township. So I don't know what you've been looking at those sort of things, but that is some of the questions we've had over the years from our residents when it comes to customer service.
I live in Cobourg, and in Cobourg we have there's actually Cobourg Police Force. They said forget it with trying to get it from anywhere else. We didn't want OPP, and it works very well. It's very efficient. So you're right. There are definitely options, whether you do it yourself or whether you piggyback on Barry or the OPP. So yes, those are the kinds of things we look at in more detail on shared services.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Jason, I guess I just want to step back there just to clarify. Also in respect of what you said, I understood that when you talked earlier about, do we do the bare minimum standard for snow removal or do we go out more often? But I was also thinking more of in line of almost a declaration of commitment to residents that when they do contact Springwater Township, they can expect a phone call back, within one business day, an email back within one business day, that kind of thing. And I don't know if those benchmarks are possible, but I think being able to communicate something like that to residents puts them in a better stead, that at least they know how long the process is going to take to get started. So I just wanted to mention that was part and partial to my question as well.
100% agree. And those KPIs, key performance measures, and targets and service standards are critical. So yes, thank you. Can I just pose a quick question?
Certainly.
This feedback has been excellent. What I've not heard is opportunity number 7 or G is a waste of time, just take it off the table. Or I haven't heard things like, well, you know what, opportunities A and P are the ones that we really should focus in on. Maybe we could use our last few minutes. If there was any on that list which you think are non-starters, just put an X through them, waste of time. Let us know if there's things that are missing, or if from your perspective you had a particular priority to say, well, if you had to do 3 things, they'd be these 3 things.
Well, judging from the way you've divided them, low complexity, low cost, and then medium high complexity, medium high cost, certainly I would feel that the medium high complexity, high cost, all of those H through K are pretty core and vital to the process we're going through. So I would think they're important, and A through G, if they're low cost and low complexity, then they're relatively easy to accomplish. Is that a fair assumption?
Yep.
Okay, Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I, to be quite frank, didn't know we were going to have that type of an opportunity, because these are all things that normally one would look at. But I would say that the things that we're already doing well probably don't need quite the attention that other areas could. So I would think that in those particular cases, and to give you an example, fiscal responsibility and management, I think the township, given what you've already said and what we've seen over the years, does a good job of that. So if we're doing a pretty decent job now, that whatever we might have been putting into that, we might be able to devote to somewhere else. So in my opinion, I would say, like, when I'm thinking about who we're working for and who we're doing all this for and what the end accomplishment is, it's the residents. I'd probably like to see H come up a little bit so that we can kind of provide the residents a little bit more of what we're able and capable of doing. So that would be my comment there, is there might be a little bit of shifting, but the ones that we're already doing quite well, I think probably don't need the same amount of attention as the ones that we could use some enhancement and some improvement on. That's all. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you, I agree with Councillor Cabral. Our term of council, we have 2 budgets left in our term, to make sure that when we do leave, our organization is as strong as we can make it. I think that any of those suggestions, anything that we can put in place today to ensure that we are prepared for the growth that is coming, and like you said, the organizational capacity to make sure that we have, the transitions that we've been through, to make sure that the CAO and everybody in the team that we have right now is ready to go. Because like I said, yes, the geographical components of growth, whether it be the water, wastewater, whichever is going to happen, it's the organizational components that I think our council needs to focus on to make sure that we can manage that moving forward.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up. But certainly the medium and high complexity, H through, on page 21, H through K, basically looking at the organization and making concrete suggestions about how we prepare for the growth. that is coming down the pipe, I think is very important. Reporting structures, staffing levels, but to the point that was made earlier, we have to make sure that the decisions we make are based on pretty concrete information. You make the point that some of the capital and operational asks are not substantiated enough. I think we have run into that in some cases. So I'd like to find out really why that is the case. Is it the lack of resources? Is it the lack of training? Is it the lack of timing to put that together? I'd like to peel back that onion to see how we can increase the quality of analysis and reporting to give council a more complete business case, due diligence before it makes its decisions on significant capital and operating items.
Great suggestion.
Okay, any other comments? Can I have a mover and seconder to receive this delivery, please? Councillor Moore and Councillor Ritchie, that the presentation on the service delivery review council workshop by Melanie Stewart, Jason Ducharme, and Graham Wedge of MNP be received. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much for the delivery, MNP. We look forward to continuing on this journey. And as was made, if you could send out that survey to us so that we all see what the survey was, then we look forward to the next communication from you. Can I have a mover and seconder that, about the bylaw, please? Money listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And a motion to adjourn this special meeting, please. Councillor Moore and Deputy Mayor Coughlin, that the special meeting of the Township Springwater does now adjourn at 5:58 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on August 5th, 6:30 p.m. in the Council Chambers Admin Centre, Minising. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, and thank you again.